Do you want to get better at Hearthstone Arena? Looking to go infinite? Then you're in the right place. What's up guys, it's Kolst here, bringing you the first video of my new Infinite Arena series. This series is targeted towards players that have a decent understanding of the game. Maybe you're averaging like 4 or 5 wins, something like that. You're trying to get to that next level towards infinite, like 7+ wins. Of course, I'm trying to make this content useful to everyone. But I do also plan on making a separate video series on more of the basic arena fundamentals, which will be targeted more towards new players. So if you don't know who I am yet, I'm kolst. I've been an Infinite Arena player since the beta back like late 2013. I've always used Arena to fund my entire Hearthstone experience. I've never spent a cent on the game. Recently I started making Arena content full time, here on YouTube and also on Twitch. I've been playing a lot trying to get onto the leaderboards. Last season I was able to get a high average on all 3 regions. Be sure to follow me on Twitch if you want to hang out, and you can watch my games live. And be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube if this kind of content interests you and you want to see more of it. In any case, let's get right into this topic. Manipulating your opponent. What I mean by this is, I'll mainly talk about how your play influences your opponent's play, and more importantly, how you can use this to influence your win rate, win more games. To start, I want to briefly introduce two concepts, terminologies. Going tall and going wide. Now these aren't advanced concepts, but they'll be the basis of my discussion, so I want to make sure we're all on the same page before moving forward, so that everything's clear. So when you say going tall, you typically mean playing like maybe one large minion. So the idea with playing one large minion is this card would potentially be a threat to the opponent's face, or that single card can trade with multiple other cards over time, unless they have a very specific answer. Now, going wide is essentially the opposite. Instead of playing one large minion, you play multiple smaller minions. So the idea there is that it would take more minions from your opponent to be able to handle these boards. And if they don't have like a board clear, then they wouldn't be able to, and you'll be able to stick minions on board, even if your minions are smaller than your opponent's. So an important thing to know is that these terms are completely relative to board state. Obviously, certain cards will be better at going tall or wide than others. Like cards that summon multiple minions will be great for going wide. Large overstat minions will be great for going tall. But in general, the same card you could use to go tall or wide in different situations. For example, on turn 4, you might go tall by playing a Chillwind Yeti, or you might go wide by playing 2 2-drops. But on turn 8, you could go wide by playing 2 Chillwind Yetis if your opponent has one large minion. So why is this important? So going wide is a tactic you can use to try to get an advantage or less of a disadvantage on a disadvantaged board. Also, of course, you can go wide to be more aggressive towards your opponent. Try to have multiple minions so they can't deal with all your minions and you can send more minions into their face. In Hearthstone, it's a powerful tool to be able to choose which trades happen, and that's part of the reason why rush minions are so strong in Arena. On top of that, certain cards like buff cards like Dark Iron Dwarf, Blessing of Kings, these kinds of cards require you to actually have a minion on board to get the full benefit of their effects. So just in general, initiative allows you to get more value out of less stats, and potentially even just having a lower curve. Alternatively, going tall would be more of a tool to stick a threat on the board that your opponent can't deal with, or gain value over them. Of course, if your one card trades for 2 or 3 of their cards, that is a great trade for you. So let's get right into the meat of the discussion. So obviously many turns in Hearthstone you won't have too many options, especially the early turn. For example, if it's turn 3 and your cheapest card is 3 mana, then you're probably going to play the 3 mana card. But other turns you will have more options, and how you use those options can often decide the outcome of a game. A lot of the whole power of drafting is just setting up your deck to give you more options so that you can handle a greater variety of scenarios. When exactly these critical decision-making turns happens will often depend on how your deck is constructed. If you have a more lower curve, a more aggressive deck, you'll have more 1 to 2 mana cards, most likely, and you'll have these critical turns much earlier. Maybe like turns 2, 3, 4 may be your critical turns. Or if you have a slower deck, maybe like turns 4, 5, 6, 7, these might be your more critical turns, and of course even further on into the game. So how do you use this to really influence the outcome of games? So obviously one factor that may influence your decision to go wide or tall might depend on what class you're against, what cards they're likely to have. For example, turn 7 Flame Strike, that's a typical case that people think about. I don't want to focus too much on that aspect of it. This will probably be a topic for a separate video, how to play around AoE and things like that. Another critical consideration in your decision to go wide or tall might be, relatively speaking, whether you think that you are the aggro or the control in the matchup. If you have a much more aggressive deck, you might need to go wider so that you can take advantage of the early turns to get more damage into your opponent. Where if you're a slower deck, you might not, especially if you're against another slower deck, you might not want to go wide because you'll be essentially wasting resources. So if you're playing a resource battle, you may want to use all of your resources as efficiently as possible. But that again is a concept for another video. In this video I want to focus more on how you can use these types of plays to manipulate your opponent into playing into your own hand. So the main idea is playing minions with certain stat lines will often influence your opponent's decision to go either wide or tall. For example, playing a low attack, high health minion like Fen Creeper for instance, will often incentivize your opponent to go tall, because they want to play a larger minion that will dominate the Fen Creeper. They would not want to go wide so much, like they wouldn't want to play two 2-drops into a Fen Creeper, because the Fen Creeper will just trade evenly with both of them, or even positively. Alternatively, Frozen Crusher is one of the most extreme examples of a card that will heavily encourage your opponent to go wide. It's almost impossible for your opponent to go tall to beat it, because this thing is huge. And this thing has the additional downside that it can only attack every other turn, so compared to other large minions, this minion is even less capable of punishing a wide board. This card is screaming out to your opponent, hey, play a lot of little stuff, I won't be able to deal with it. So my point here is that you should always keep in mind what your play is influencing your opponent to do. And with this, you can use this to your advantage to kind of trick your opponent into playing into your hand. So we're going to use Mage as an example again because it's the most straightforward, I think, because you have two prototypical cards to punish each of those two plays. You have Polymorph, which punishes going tall, one large minion, and you have Flame Strike, which punishes a wide board. So let's say it's turn 6 and you have these two cards in your hand, the Fen Creeper and the Frozen Crusher. You're thinking about which minion you want to play. I know I picked examples of not quite the same cost and power level, but try to imagine that that's not the primary concern here. You know that playing a Fen Creeper would encourage your opponent to go tall, where playing a Frozen Crusher would encourage your opponent to go wide. Which one is the correct play? That might often depend on what the other cards are in your hand. If you have the Polymorph in your hand, you might want to play the Fen Creeper to trick your opponent into playing a tall minion, which will give you a tempo advantage and give you a better advantage in the game. If you have the Flame Strike, you might want to play the Frozen Crusher to trick your opponent into thinking that maybe you won't be able to deal with a wide board. Another critical thing to consider is that this also works in reverse. If you lack the board clear, you might want to avoid playing a minion such as Frozen Crusher, because this could be a huge risk. You might encourage your opponent to do the exact thing that you don't want them to do. Alternatively, if you play something like a Fen Creeper and you don't have the Polymorph, they might play something to dominate you and there'll be nothing you can do about it. So it might be better to instead maybe play two minions and go wide yourself to protect yourself a little bit against this scenario. Of course, the way Hearthstone is, you don't always have too many cards, so you don't always have all the options on every turn. So again, comparing the Frozen Crusher to the Fen Creeper, the Frozen Crusher is a much stronger card if you have the option to play both. But again, you might have other situations where the power level difference is a bit smaller, and playing the slightly weaker card might actually be better for you, because it's a better fit for the situation. It's not too uncommon to see someone on turn 4, maybe you have a decent 3-drop and a decent 4-drop, and you'll see someone actually play the 3-drop because it just fits the situation better. It can be really difficult to see sometimes which opportunities are the best ones in any given situation, and that's kind of the magic of Hearthstone. It's so simple on the surface, but there's all this complexity underneath. Anyway, that's it for my video today. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone. You're awesome if you made it this far. I'm sure you'll be making a lot of gold in the arena very soon. Make sure to like this video if you liked the video, and subscribe to this channel and click the bell if you want to see more of this content in the future. Also check me out on Twitch if you want to see me when I go live. Also be sure to comment if you have any questions, if you have any ideas for content you would like to see on this channel, and of course you can come chat with me in Twitch as well. We have a great community over there and we're always happy to see new faces, so be sure to come on in and join. If you're interested in other arena content on my channel, we have a drafting series which I can have linked up here for you to check out. Anyhow, thanks again and I'll see you guys next time.